Football for me, it means people. Everyone who's involved for the right reasons. They want to play because they love the game, they want to be involved, and it brings connection between everyone, whether it's standing on the sides, whether it's in the crowd, just watching and not playing.
And with football being for everyone, whether you're a coach, a player, an aspiring player for the future, someone seeking a scholarship, a teacher, a youth worker, a professional, a volunteer, someone seeking to get involved in the game, a volunteer parent, whether they're reflecting on their journey and how they can understand their grassroots team, an aspiring academy coach yourself, no matter what and no matter where you're listening, this podcast is really for you. On the Reflective Coach podcast, there are so many wonderful guests that feature on the podcast, whether this is former professionals, current professionals, and professionals of all backgrounds within the Coaching Insight series that really inspire, understand, support, and are reflective amongst this journey as they share their own insights, experiences, their own journey, their own reflections, strategies, insights, and other stories into the Reflective Coach podcast. Each week features a new guest, and each new guest brings something new to the podcast. I've been so lucky to have so many wonderful guests on, and you can really listen to all the episodes on Spotify, YouTube, and Podcast Addict, with continuous updates on Twitter and LinkedIn. By subscribing, commenting, following, engaging with all the posts amongst social media, you can really keep up to date with all the episodes.
I take this as a challenge, but at the same time, like, you can have such an impact. There's not that many Division I opportunities that come around at this level, especially not having played college soccer myself. So you kind of jump at that chance, kind of throw yourself all in, and the impact that you have on these players is tremendous. Whereas, like you said, there's people that kind of turn that down and say, no, I don't want to be here. That's going to be way too much work. I'm on the complete other side of it where I'm just digging my heels in, ready to get to work.
I would try to kind of eliminate those mental mistakes. But other than that, we got a fantastic group of players, man. Players that work hard, players that actually love the game. That's the one thing we never have to question is effort and how much work they want to put into it, and they really want it really bad. I've been here since February, so technically my first fall season here, and I love it so far.
Being able to read the room, kind of read that energy, and making sure that I give these players confidence. So I think if I can figure out the one thing you do really well off the field or on the field, then my job is to help you be even better in that one thing that you can do that really makes you kind of stand out. Of course, we want to work on deficiencies and getting better in all different areas, but I love these players that have different personalities and are confident enough to kind of show that on the field and not necessarily want to blend in with everyone else.
Not too bad, man. Just trying to stay out of the heat over here in Louisiana, but other than that, not too bad.
Good, glad to hear. I've heard it's warm over in the States right now in certain parts, so very hot.
Yeah, I mean, luckily, like right now, it's nice out, and by nice I mean it's 65% humidity and 96 degrees. Whereas last week it got up to like 115 real feel, so it was pretty hot.
Very hot, massively hot compared to us in the UK right now. I can see out the window. It's wet, it's drizzly, it's grey, it's dark, and that's the contrast to where we're at in the UK. So whenever I speak to coaches, like, can't wait to come to the UK, I was like, you're winning a life over there. You're coaching full time, you've got a great program, it's hot, it's warm, every state's different. Like, don't bother coming. So you're assistant coach, you're coaching. So what's that look like on a day-to-day? How's it going for you? How's the program starting off?
Struggling a little bit right now in terms of where we're at, like in terms of form, but we're getting there. We're trying to kind of eliminate those mental mistakes. But other than that, we got a fantastic group of players, man. Players that work hard, players that actually love the game. That's the one thing we never have to question is effort and how much work they want to put into it, and they really want it really bad. I've been here since February, so technically my first fall season here, and I love it so far.
And that's the important thing is, loving it and making sure that, the non-negotiables or the standards such as that effort and hard work is maintained despite the struggles and what you're going through. And if you can see that, then you've got the right building blocks. Whereas if you weren't seeing that effort and then that hard work, then you've got a bigger area to sort of bounce off and to really work upon and work from because of the variables and kind of standards that go in within that consideration.
Absolutely.
And you said about struggles and you said about mental mistakes. So, what kind of mental mistakes are your team making, for example, right now?
Right now, especially building out of the back in terms of
possession, we're almost trying to force it at times. We have players open 5-10 feet away, and we're looking for that home run ball, trying to get everything all at once, all that real estate. So just trying to keep it simple, and it's not a trick. She's wide open for a reason because of the way we're playing, because of our shape, what we're trying to get to. So just kind of slowing it down from a decision-making standpoint and kind of getting them to see all the options.
And what do you think they're making those mistakes or trying to force those passes then?
I think it's one of those things where this program in the past has been struggling. So last season they won 2 games. The year before there was 1 tie, and then there was a couple seasons where there wasn't much better. So just trying to get over that hump. We've turned the roster around in the last 2 years, but that kind of still looms over your head where we haven't done it before yet. Everyone wants it so bad, and it's almost like we're pressing too much. And once we get that first goal, that first victory, then everything will kind of ease out and everyone will kind of relax, and I think everything will be a little bit easier for us.
And hopefully it turns that corner and that you can get into that sort of swing of things and overcome those mistakes and build off what you have in terms of those non-negotiables. But, obviously off the background of the history and the way that the programme has gone and having some of those lows which you've sort of gone off there and only been in with the programme for, what was it, 6 months or something like that. Going in, it's a sort of position where you could have considered, do I really want to go into this knowing how unsuccessful the team have been or the struggles that they've had? But you can go in and really have such a foundation and springboard to go in and have that huge impact. So those mental mistakes, right, we've overcome them. How are we playing that from the back? Right, that's a huge improvement. How have we picked up form? How's the morale within the team? And then comes the environment, then comes the roster, then comes everything else which comes into play. So it's actually a very good position, whereas some people might go, no, don't want to go near that, whereas it's a really good position to build upon. And realistically, you can actually really then get to coach the players because you're able to get into the things like mental mistakes that they're making, doing the scenarios, how they can receive, how they can play out, the position, the movement, in and out of possession, unit work, and there's so much which comes into play, which makes it really exciting from that perspective.
Absolutely, and the other places I've been, whether it's club or whether it was my last stop coaching college, like I'm used to winning, and it's one of these things where like I take this as a challenge, but at the same time, like you can have such an impact. There's not that many Division I opportunities that come around at this level, especially not having played college soccer myself. So you kind of jump at that chance, kind of throw yourself all in, and the impact that you have on these players is tremendous. Whereas, like you said, there's people that kind of turn that down and say, no, I don't want to be here. That's going to be way too much work. I'm on the complete other side of it where I'm just digging my heels in, ready to get to work. The players know that I want to be here. They know that there's other opportunities out there, but I chose here because I want to help this group. I want to work with these players that want to put in the work, want to get better, and that's a big step for me. If you're doing everything you can, then I'm going to try and put you in the best position you can to make yourself successful.
I love that, and I think that's such an important point, putting them in a position whereby you can help them become successful and deliver that work with them and how you go about what success looks like to them, as well as what it might look like for you, as well as the program. So I think that's a great position to be in as well. And, whilst you say there that you didn't play college soccer and now you're in this position, do you think that, sometimes it's difficult to be in a coach position or to try and get on the grass or into the work a little bit more because you didn't play at a certain level? Because sometimes sometimes I think that because I didn't play the certain levels, I was an awful footballer, didn't have the technical ability, but I enjoy coaching and I love it. And it's only the odd occasion I might judge myself and think, do you know what, if I played, I might have actually had a better understanding here in this concept, or I might have understood this a little bit better, or I can have a little more, a few more takeaways from match day, etc. So do you think that has a big impact, or do you think it has such a minimal one that we can just overcome it and not really worry about it?
I think it depends how you look at it. I think from the player's point of view, probably not that big of an impact. At the end of the day, they want to know that first that you care, two that you know what you're talking about, and three that you're willing to make them better and that you're doing the work. I think if they see those three things from you, then it doesn't matter what level you played at. From a coaching standpoint, probably a little bit more, where, especially at this high of a level, most of these guys that do have these jobs do have excellent credentials, did play college soccer, or played overseas or anything like that. So from that standpoint, it's a little bit intimidating, but I know from my background, I've always been one to kind of dig in and work my butt off. And when I started club, I saw a group from when they were U10, saw them all the way through graduating high school. And from my standpoint, when I started so young, I started coaching when I was 22. For me, it was more about, hey, if I want to keep this group together, if I want to do what's absolutely best for these girls, then I have to make sure that I'm getting better and I'm going out and getting my credentials better, making sure that I'm learning and know what they need in order for them to. Now we're moving on to 11 aside to stay with me. Now we're moving on to playing high level club, where now I need to focus on recruiting and learn how to get them into these in front of college coaches and all these different tools that I just added to my tool belt, doing it all by myself, running an independent club. Then I kind of feel like I grabbed a lot of different skill sets that kind of helped me grow, and it's kind of helped what differentiates me to kind of be at this level.
I love that within itself as well. And, whilst it can be hard and maybe, in our mental capacity of looking at other coaches and maybe being intimidated because of the levels that they played at and the experience that they have, we have to pitch ourselves up there with them and have those skill sets to really be up on there, to be on that level whereby we're not struggling or being put out by the lack of experience in certain areas where we didn't play, where we can really take that away. But I don't think we have to be a master tactician or a master of really having played the game to a certain level to work with the players, as you said, because if you get those players over the line and you get to build that relationship, that trust, and then you're able to see the technical development in them and you get to see them grow as a person, and then if they go off and get a scholarship or they become semi-pro or professional, then realistically you've done such a great job. And you might not be, that Premier League manager or, managing the US national team. But if you're getting players at a professional level, then what a success you're having, because you're actually getting players to play for those managers. And if it weren't for coaches like yourself getting players to that level, then realistically there wouldn't be any players for them to pick from or manage.
Yeah. And I mean, the last 2 years that I had those girls in club, we put 25 of them between Division I and Division III programs. We have one program right now in North Carolina that has 6 of my club players on there, all playing together still. So they got to see each other from when they were little, 10, 11, 12, all the way they're still playing together in college, which is fantastic.
I love that, and that's such success within itself. But it's also great that they're still playing together. They still have that connection, that harmony, and that's been as an impact of the work that you've put in and that time that you spent with them. And they're taking that so much further beyond what you whereby you might not be working with them every day, or might not be consistently with them, but they're still taking that away and having that whereby they're still able to have those relationships and play together and make those memories which are going to last even longer.
Absolutely.
For sure. And when you talk about those skills then, what are, say, your top 5 skills that you haven't maintained where you've learned along the way?
I think my first one is just kind of like EQ skills, like learning how to blend different personalities together. Being able to read the room, kind of read that energy, and making sure that I give these players confidence. So I think if I can figure out the one thing you do really well off the field or on the field, then my job is to help you be even better in that one thing that you can do that really makes you kind of stand out. Of course, we want to work on deficiencies and getting better in all different areas, but I love these players that have different personalities and are confident enough to kind of show that on the field and not necessarily want to blend in with everyone else.
I love that, and I really do love that about those personalities, and maybe not wanting to blend in with everyone else, but how they can stand out by themselves and really be true to who they are. Because sometimes you can mold and develop players in a way they think, the way that they try and get into the squad, etc. But I think sometimes, you know, you look at some of the people that I work with or the young people that I do, and I think, do you know what? I don't want your personality to be like everyone else. I don't want you to be robotic. And by you standing out and you know, maybe your behavior might be negative, because I work in school and education, it might be negative, but automatically you stood out, and although you stood out maybe for a bad point, you've caught the eye of someone, so therefore they might work with you, and then they're able to mentor you, work with you, chip away a couple of the little things, but you're able to maintain your personality, and then that might actually take you further than all the robots that are collected together, because you've actually come out of that crowd and you've been recognized above them, and it's sort of put you in a positive manner where we can switch that rather than from a negative one. So I really like not blending every personality, but I like that you also go about blending personalities, and reading the room I think is a really important point. Understanding those personalities, understanding how they're going to take on recognition, that information, and that they're all got a different part to play within that team.
Absolutely. And then we kind of took it a step further where I remember I used to do personality tests with players in terms of like trying to figure out what four letters. Like I know I'm an ENFP for Myers Briggs, and I know kind of how that makes me stand out, what I'm really good at, where my shortcomings are, and I can work on those things. But from a team standpoint, getting them to understand, hey, maybe the way our team is set up right now, we have our extroverted players end up playing wide because they're my wingers or they're my number 9. But my more introverted players that are going to be a little bit more safe ends up being my center backs, ends up being my holding mid. And you kind of understand at that point, especially when you don't have natural leaders or you're trying to groom people into those leadership roles, then it's, hey, maybe she's not talking. I understand it's not in her personality. Now I can have 2 or 3 other people trying to pick up that communication for them at those younger ages and trying to learn how to play off of each other that way and know who you're playing with along with whatever formation and tactics and stuff you're applying to it.
And that's such an important concept as well, and how you bring that together to really utilize these players. And when it comes about, you know, the lack of success that you might not be having, and you know, building upon that, upon the long term output or the review of the seasons ahead, do you think recruiting personality or recruiting technical ability is going to be one over the other, where you could really turn that corner to bridging that success? Would you think there's an importance on one over the other, or do you think you have to really get that balance right?
I think there's definitely a balance, and I think definitely personalities do play a big part in that. If you get a number 9, for example, or someone or a winger who's very like alpha-like or very outgoing in that regard, then you can't have them at a very early stage when you're still kind of developing the rest of the team, if that makes sense, because then you have the tendency for a lot more problems. I think once you get the personalities right and you get to the team where they're competing at a really good level and you're just trying to get over that hump, then you can afford to bring a couple more of those higher end personalities that need more work to manage off the field, and get everyone to understand and buy in that, hey, like we need that directness, we need that brashness about us every now and then to kind of get the job done and help get us over the hump and kind of take that personality over. So I think there's definitely a good balance that you kind of have a really good feel of where you're at in terms of development, in terms of where the team's at and kind of where you're going.
And I you know, that again is such a good outlook in terms of how you can utilize those personalities, utilize those individuals, because someone might come in and go, do you know what, we've actually not had that success as you're saying. So when we get this recruitment stage, we're going to go out and find the best top 20 technical players that we're able to recruit, and we're going to build this style of play that we want with our principles, and we're going to have success off that. And it might be a turning point and that might work, but I think there's also that balance which you said is the important aspect there, is getting those personalities whereby you can support the technical players and technical players are able to work with the personalities, where it creates that combination of then being able to blend the personalities but then utilize those who don't want to fit in, and really taking that within a direction that can allow you to turn that point from from non-success into success. And that is such an important point, not to just focus everything on a technical ability, but utilize the personalities that are around you to really try and take things in a direction that can really lead you to the levels that you want to achieve.
For sure, because the problem is if you end up getting that player too early, then you end up frustration on both sides. One, that they're not ready and we're not winning enough, and two, that they're standing out trying to do their own thing and they're too direct at that point. You end up causing problems for yourself if you don't take both things into account.
And whilst you've touched upon, a lot of personality, and we've had this discussion around players and maybe the psycho side and the mental thinking, would you really pitch yourself as a psychosocial coach, or are you more of a tactical coach, or are you a physical coach, or do you try and blend it across and look very balanced? Where do you sort of pitch yourself if there were 4 areas and you had to put your marker in one or in an area?
I'm definitely very analytical when it comes to tactics in film. But I look at it more of a standpoint of not what we're doing wrong, but what the process is. So, hey, what's the problem? What are we trying to fix? And in a game standpoint, then that's kind of how I'm looking at it. There's no emotion in that at all. I think the emotional side for me comes with connecting with these players one-on-one, developing those relationships, learning what buttons you can push, learning how to get the best out of someone. And I connect, I think, probably 85-90% on that personal side, building those relationships. I think the soccer aspect of it is a lot more work and process oriented in terms that way, but I think most of what I'm drawn to and what I love about coaching is those personalities and getting to know people and kind of developing those relationships and getting that part right.
And I think that's what draws me into working with players as well, is that personality side. So I really love the technical side, but I would pitch myself as a technical psychosocial coach, and then I'd go into tactical and then physical. And physical can come across in terms of what I'm doing technically, but would I really have a huge concept and basis upon how I go about planning my sessions? Would I go in and going, right, I'm going to really focus on the physical side and build and plan this and do that? Or am I doing it more around the technical and then bridging in the physical side into that? So that's where I'd pitch myself, and that's how I sort of enjoy working with players. So once I get that psychosocial side, then I'm able to get out the tactical, then I'm able to get into the game intelligence, game understanding, how they're thinking about the game, how they're approaching scenarios, how they overcome, how they work with their teammates. And I think that all works hand in hand. So maybe those 4 areas can overlap, but they may be interchanged, but you might have a preference on that list of how you go about the way you work around it. So when it comes to that analytical side, that's actually really good in how you can improve the game understanding for those players and recreate moments or scenarios to get into that technical side, which then goes into a really tactical shape, or going into a tactical shape and then looking at the technical aspects of it. So it's always interchanging, and that's why coaching is so fun.
Agreed. I mean, we'll have some players here where I know, just based on getting to know them and how they like to learn, where I know I can go to player A and they're like, what's the problem, what's going on in the game? And I only can give them 1 thing, 2 things max in terms of what to look for, because they're so that focused, they're so tunnel vision in that regard. Whereas I have a more creative type, they get subbed off, we want to chat on the sideline, and we can talk about setting things up 4, 5, 6, 7 times to get to another. Let's say we're going 1v1. So I'm like, okay, well, that player keeps leaning inside, so we drive her inside these first 2 times. So that 3rd time, exactly where that cutback is. We can take her wide, and now we know what we're looking for on that cross. And I can give her 7 different options, and she's okay with that. But a different player would be overwhelmed if I gave them that same amount of direction and freedom. They just want to know, hey, I need to fix A, I need to fix B, and that's it. And we can focus on that. We'll focus everything else later on. So it's fun knowing personalities that way, knowing who you can push different ways in terms of solving different kinds of problems.
And again, that's where the fun of it comes into, because you get those different personalities and how they may think about it, how you can approach those problems, the way that they might react, how you can deploy a problem, and really put that into a training session. So some players might go in and go, do you know what, this session is total carnage, but for other players, they're really thinking about and they're really bowed into the session because they want to problem solve. They want to think how they could get the ball from point A to point C quicker than going from A, B, C, or how they can track back and win the ball back even faster. So I have such a place for carnage sessions, and it's great to see the different responses from those players when you deliver those different type of sessions.
Absolutely.
And when you touch upon players and the way that they'd like to learn, how do you like to coach them?
I'm pretty fluid, man. I think I've done enough work in learning how to adapt. I did a year with AmeriCorps and CCC. And basically, if you're not familiar with it, it's kind of like the Peace Corps, but it's a domestic version that we have in the U.S.
Right.
So I was stationed out in Iowa. I was 21, 22 years old. And we spent a whole year traveling around the United States doing different community service projects, disaster relief, living in with a group of 14 to 18 people at a time. Basically all volunteer where we got $13 a day. And the biggest thing you learn from it is, one, learning to work with different kinds of people, especially at that age where you don't really know what you don't know. And two, just being flexible. Sometimes we'd be camping for 2 months at a time. Sometimes we would be living in a hotel. Sometimes we would be living in a house or a church with 40 other people doing disaster work. So really learn to kind of blend in with different personalities, learn how to work with different people. We got conflict resolution training. We did a lot of personality stuff and learned how to live in teams and groups and kind of see what those ups and downs are like. And I think that really shaped my outlook on life and how I work with these players and are able to kind of adapt and have a lot of empathy and kind of walk in their shoes, as opposed to taking a hard line and trying to morph everything around what I want. When it's going to be different season to season, game to game sometimes, or year to year.
I think that, again, that is really important because it's not just about what you want, but how you might have different changes every year, those different individuals coming through the door, and giving them the experiences which are going to really bode well with them, the way that you've taken those experiences as well. But, coaching's a hard world. We're working with people, we're working with those personalities, and trying to get through is really difficult. But by your experiences and what you've been able to have by blending with personalities, by living in different domains, by living within different groups, being under different contrasts and variables and different environments and experiences, and doing that daily and over weeks and time, and how that all pitches in has allowed you to sort of adapt to see, the most outgoing person to the least outgoing person, to one of the most difficult people to work with to the least difficult people. And by having this all-round huge circle of all the different people that you're going to meet across life, it makes coaching so much easier to really work and understand with players. So sometimes when players come in, coaches can be off-put by them because they have such a dominant personality, or they're very introverted in the way that they are, and they can be quite hard to get through to. So therefore, when you've got all these different skills and this different experience and knowledge, as well as experiences, it actually makes it so much easier to go and work with these players, and then to bridge together a really nice program, and to really pitch in your experiences into how they might react, how they might want to learn, how it's actually going to benefit them in doing so. And whilst you went out and had those experiences, as you said, you're able to go out and create, like a pre-season or end of season program, or community events throughout the year whereby they can go and do those similar experiences, and therefore they're learning a lot more as an individual than someone else at a different institution out who has very traditional, very routine, to the norm experiences, for example.
Yeah, and I think where I'm at right now here at Nichols is a great opportunity for me to kind of do that, where everywhere I've been in terms of coaching club, coaching high school, as a DOC, like I've been used to being that number one person and having all that responsibility on me. And I think the hardest part for me to adjust in the college game was no longer being number one. It's going in and learning how to be a number two. And now kind of getting that balance right, where now I can spend a lot of that time working with those players individually, whether it's individual sessions when they need it, or picking them up after they've had a hard game, and kind of really focus on that side and not have all that responsibility of a budget hanging over my head, of all the administration work and all that stuff. Then I think I'm in a really good spot mentally in terms of how I'm learning and how I'm growing as well, that it allows me to do kind of what I'm really good at.
And I'm in a similar position to you, so I've always been in a head coach or lead coach role, this is the first season whereby I'm going in as a second, so as an assistant. So that sort of way of doing things is very different. So the other day at training, being asked to do certain things and assist on delivering a session. I'm very much used to delivering a session to the way that I would, and then we plan out a session with my other assistants, and they might lead on it, but we complement each other because we very much understand the wavelength that we're on. But now I'm an assistant to someone else. It's sort of a very seamless sort of transition for me because I'm able to learn. But then it can also be difficult at times because you're sort of going up to head coach, coming back down to say an assistant, whereas it's not really coming back down. You're actually coming into a seamless transition to learn off someone else, to learn off that environment where it might be very different from, say, school or club or the very different programs where you've been able to be in those other positions, and you're able to, as you say, add to your skill set and what you're learning.
Yeah, and I won't lie, man. I struggled my last position before I got here. It was a D3 position, and just kind of learning and finding that balance. And I think the biggest thing that helped me once I got here, I read a quote, and it said something to the effect of, "You want to be a leader so bad, but you're not even a good soldier yet," and that kind of really stuck with me and kind of changed my mindset a little bit. And it's like, look, like I know I want to end up as a head coach at a major program one day, but at the end of the day, I need to learn how to do this job as well, and do it to the best of my ability. And I think that kind of shifted that mindset for me and kind of helped me grow in terms of how I'm looking at things now and what I'm trying to do to make sure that I'm supporting our head coach and getting everything that he needs as well.
And I think that's a great sort of takeaway for any coach who's listening, or consideration is not to accelerate the process too much, or to actually review where they're at, and maybe they are in a struggling position, or they might be better off transitioning back into being an assistant and spending a little bit more time learning off someone else to do the job. And I love that quote about that soldier quote, because you actually might be in a position where you're a soldier, but you might want to be that captain, you might want to be the major, you might want to be at the top, but you actually haven't discovered all the skills and experiences which is going to lead you getting there. You might actually be on paper the best fit for it, but then you might get there and realize how out of depth you actually are. So go back down and experience it. So when you're on that journey, don't rush it, don't over push yourself, because everything's going to gradually move at a right period of time, and there's going to be a point where you're going to go, yes, I'm actually ready now at this point. And sometimes you can go, I want to be at this point, but you're not actually ready for it. And that's the hard thing in understanding when the right time is, waiting for the right time, taking that journey as it comes, trying to accelerate yourself. But that's the very fine art of life. And then that professional sort of input is how we can get that fine margin into how we can sort of almost get to the way that we perfect our journey in the way that when the time is right, and not rushing it but waiting for it to come.
Yeah, and the same thing I tell these girls all the time is, it's not so much the destination but who you become along the way, and kind of making sure you kind of take all those experiences and kind of use it. You only get to play college soccer one time, or for 4 years. You don't get to redo it all over again as a player. So take advantage of it, take it for what it's worth, the ups and downs. At the end of the day, I think the way I look at coaching, especially from club and at this level, the way I'm going to look at success is how many weddings I get invited to at the end of the day. Making sure that I have those relationships with these players, and good enough that I get invited to a couple of these when the time comes. And that's kind of how I look at things.
And that's again something which is really that gets to live with you, and you get to know that impact, because then you get to see who invites you, who wants you to be part of their lives, those who want you to be part of those vivid memories. And just by having something so little as a wedding invite, which can be massive within itself, it can actually extend to so many different ways. Going, do you know what, we only had these 4 years together, but I'm so glad this has lasted over the next 10 because of this connection that we have, or because of the 4 years, look at the life that you're going on and living. And I'm sitting here now as a guest at your wedding, but I'm not your coach anymore, but I'm someone that you value, and I value you. And that is such an important place that we play within people's lives in such a short period that we have with them, and in a period where we don't get to repeat that ever again.
Absolutely.
and that's so exciting and so different. And when you get into sort of the technical and tactical side, then and you're struggling from playing out further back, for example, and that's you're not having the success that you want right now. Are you going about changing your formation and your playing principles until you can try and find a way that is helping your team win, or do you maintain your sort of formations and your principles and develop the players around that because that's the way you want the program to move forward?
That's the struggle, right? So, as much as I'm focused on the process, and if I determine that, hey, I don't think it's working, let's see if we can kind of shift it. At the end of the day, you have to have all the players bought into what they want to do as well, right? So we can sit here and say, hey, this 4-3-3 right now I don't think it's working. Can we shift to something different? But at the end of the day, if most of our mistakes are mental, it doesn't really matter what formation we're in, right? We're still making those same mistakes, and that's not going to fix being in a 3-5-2 over a 4-3-3, that 10-yard pass that we can't complete from center back to outside back, from outside back to our number 11 or to our center mid. So at the end of the day, it's, hey, can we work through this process? This is the benefits if we go this way. This is the benefits if we stay the same. We understand what kind of mistakes we're making, get them involved in that process. And if they decide, hey, we want to stick with our 4-3-3 or the formation we're in right now, then it's can we go ahead and get over that hump and understand where we're making those mistakes and kind of how can we correct them and make sure everyone's on the same page. And if everyone's bought in, then we can go that way. And we make a decision as a whole. But what we can't happen is half the group wants one thing, the other half wants the other, and then you're going to be fighting an uphill battle either way. So I think as much as I grew up idolizing Bielsa and kind of those tactics and rotation and positional play, if we can't do that, if we're not at that level at the moment, then there's no point in trying to switch to something different. And let's just get better at what we can get better at and control what we can control. Because at the end of the day, as our bad start is 100% on us, but we've also been playing some really good teams. And that's not always going to be the case.
And again, another key takeaway there is what you can control, what you can't control, and not changing too much overly because, you know, if you're still getting it wrong mentally and you're not able to deploy it, no matter how many different ways you might try and change the formation or change your playing principles, unless it's mentally sunk in about how you approach the scenario or how you're prepared, then a number of ways are not going to work. And that's, again, trying to get it right in that balance and the love of fun of coaching, but also the very difficult side as well, because it might become a very frustrating point whereby you might have changed different concepts, but you're still not getting it and the success isn't there. So, you know, how much more can you maintain that and have that? But that's where the fun of coaching comes in. And if you want a long-term output of how you want the program to be in terms of the playing principles and how you want to be seen, whether that be an attacking team, a defending team, a balanced team, a counter-attack, or a low-sitting block team, for example, how do you want the sort of team to look on a long-term basis, and how do you want them to play?
Ideally, we want to play aggressive. We want to play fast. And I think for me, that's kind of where that structure is. That's kind of the end of it. For me, the way I look at things is I want to manipulate space. So how can we take advantage of certain pockets of space? How can we take advantage of getting teams to do one thing so we can do something else? And I don't think it really matters what formation we're in as long as that spine is the same. We can kind of be a little bit more flexible in terms of how you go about it. But if we can get to the point where we understand space, how to manipulate it and how to attack it, then I think we're in a good spot. Defensively, we know we want to be tough to play against. I think the way we look at playing defense right now, depending on, doesn't matter the formation, it's almost like you have full-size sheets for a king-size bed. You're not going to be able to take everything away, right? At some point, you're either your left foot or your left hand's going to get cold. Depends on like what you're trying to take away. So you figure out what's important to you, what your principles are based on your players that you've brought in and kind of how you want to defend. And then we kind of make adjustments that way. So sometimes it might be defending in a back four. Sometimes it might look like a back five. Sometimes it might be two holding. Sometimes it might be one. Not necessarily dictated by the opponent, but what you're trying to get on the attacking end. To me, it's all connected.
And it absolutely is all connected, and how you go about deploying that and putting that into practice, and how that may look on the long-term output, it's definitely going to be interesting how that journey goes from here to now. How you work with the players, how you shape that mentally, how recruitment goes, how you work with the head coach, how you work upon that program, the response to games, how you stop preventing goals going in, how you stop being pressed, and how much comes into it in that detail. And it's great in terms of that vision can be deployed and how that is going to work long term. And this is not what the success in the way that you play now doesn't define where you're going to be in the next year or year and a half, for example. And again, that's a really exciting time to be a part of, but it's also looking at the here and now and trying to work on what you've got in front of you in terms of those resources. And you've got this sort of style now where you're playing. How would you describe the way that you're playing right now, and what's needed to be deployed to get the players to have a good season?
I think it's just mentally, everyone's kind of feeling that pressure, where we haven't scored a goal yet, so everyone's kind of feeling that part. And I think as soon as that first one, then like everyone relaxes, right? So I think there's certain times in games where like you can kind of feel the tension, or hey, we miss a sitter right in front of net. All of a sudden, like that's 3 minutes into the game, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in a dogfight the rest of the game because we didn't finish that first goal in the first 3 minutes. So it's just mentally staying connected, trying to get everyone to play for each other, and kind of sticking together that way, and making sure that when things get hard, that we get closer as a group as opposed to kind of everyone pulling away to do their own thing. I think if we can do those things, then eventually that first win's going to come. And then I think once that does, then we're in a really good spot mentally in terms of being able to kind of keep the ship headed that direction.
And so you've got players on the program now. They're within this format that you have. They're within a period where you're struggling, where maybe confidence is down. They're lacking belief. And say this persists, and you sort of end up in a similar position at the end of the season or whenever you finish. Can players come and review themselves in a position where they go, you know what, I'm not seeing the success here which I thought I would have, or I think there should be, so I'm going to go off and transfer to a different institution, for example?
Yeah, I mean, it happens all the time. I mean, right now, there's probably still over 1,500 players in that transfer portal. People are always looking to go somewhere else when they're not finding success, whether it's from their own doing or just picking the wrong school from the get-go. But at the end of the day, you work with what you got. And if you want to be here, then we definitely want to have you. And we're going to do everything we can to the best of our ability to put you in a position to succeed. And that's kind of the environment that we're trying to build here. Doesn't matter if you're a freshman, doesn't matter if you're a senior, like we're going to treat everyone the same in terms of development. And right now we're super young. We brought in 17 freshmen last year. We brought in 10 new players this fall. So we are super young. So the nice thing with this group is that core is going to be here for the next 3 or 4 years, and stay together and work together, and they'll come out better for it because they've gone through these hard times, and we're able to get over that hump, and then they'll be able to see kind of where they're at 3 or 4 years from now. I think the struggle right now is we're still trying to get over that hump, and we still have players that haven't done it before. We still have players that are brand new to this, and it's just getting everyone on the same page, working together to kind of get over that hump mentally. And then once we do, then I guarantee we'll be fine.
I completely understand the position that you're in, and the contrast that you're coming from, because last year I was an under-19s head coach, and I went into a club, and it was very much, we had a core of young players coming through from under-16s, and it was a very large part of that squad, and as a result they're coming into an under-19s league where some of the players have already been playing for 3 years, because you've got a 16 to 19 sort of three-year range, and whilst they're doing that, some have played seniors, some have played up levels, they're physically bigger, they're older, they're more experienced, they've bonded together longer as a squad, so there's a lot of variables and contrasts that come into it. So when we brought the young players through, and it was a very big core, we only had some players who were still eligible at the last stage of under-19s, before they were too old, and they've been playing that for 2 years. But whilst we've done so, we sort of had their philosophy and way of doing things, how the under-16s were doing things, and then how I came and pitched it. So we had already 3 different ways that we were thinking about how we were doing it, and then we were trying to deploy that then as one. But whereas we weren't seeing as much much success as we would have liked, or maybe the previous under 19s where the previous league format was in play had a lot of success, the success actually decreased massively on that contrast of what was available. But it wasn't a picture that we were having. And what we kept building upon was, this is a 3-year project. These under 16s, you're going to be together for the next 3 years. So you're that core, which we're going to see on that long-term benefit, like you are with your freshmen and your players coming in. And I think that's the important flip side of the message that comes across.
Yeah, I remember the year after COVID, I took over a high school program out in Virginia, and we had some players that played club for me before. We also had some brand new players that hadn't played a lick of club before. They just play house league. The team itself had struggled the previous years, and the one benefit of COVID was that our season, instead of starting in February, didn't start till April. So I got them as soon as I got hired in November, basically 3-4 months of just working with that group and getting everyone to understand that, hey, we know we all have different styles of playing. We've all play at different levels, but for us, for this group, we have to create our own identity for how we want to play this season. It's not going to be the same as it was last year. It's not going to be the same as it's going to be next year, but we have to create an identity for this year, and we have to know what that looks like to us, what's acceptable, what those standards are, and what we're going to hold ourselves to at that point. And we took a group that went from winning 4 games the year before, and the year before that on average of 4 games, to we lost 1 game, broke every school record in terms of scoring, goals against, goals for, and we did that in a 10-game span, made it all the way to regionals that year, playing 10 games instead of 18. So we were making sure that everyone got on the same page, making sure that these girls believed in what we were doing from the get-go. And then the first bit of adversity that we had, we kind of used that as a springboard, as opposed to saying, hey, things aren't working. It's, hey, we reacted okay. How do we make sure that we react better going forward? And then that was a team that we ended up beating for the title, for the championship, when we played them the last game of the season. Going forward after that. So, I mean, getting everyone to believe in what we were doing and kind of doing things that this group had never done before, just little by little, and giving them that confidence as a group on the field, and knowing that they could be confident in me, and knowing that I was putting in the work off the field as well for them. It kind of all blended together into a perfect storm that year.
And it sounds like you had a great year and you're able to really build upon that identity and the standards that you wanted to have, and the success that those players can really look back and hold within good regard, because, beating records, that's something which is really great to take away and really hold in the stead of what you had, and how you were able to play part of that program, and what lives on and what they're able to take away. So whilst you've moved on and got different experiences, they're still able to take away those accolades and can still look back with a lot of fondness, which is really important to them, and can be part of that bigger picture of, even though that program moves on, how much can they reflect back upon, I enjoyed those moments, I learned this off Juan, and we've done this together as a team, and he turned this round, and do you look at that synergy we had, and look at the energy we had within the team. And that is such a great outcome and success that you're having with those players at that period of time, which they're still thriving off now, whilst you're sort of going in a different direction.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, what I told them when it was all said and done was like, look, like, this is the same group that you guys had last year, so you guys can do it. So next time when they go around, or they're in college, or they're in regular jobs and they're facing something that they've been struggling with, it's the same people. They can dig themselves out as long as they kind of figure out what works for them, what's not working for them, and get everyone on the same page. Then it's not rocket science at that point, if once they know that they can do it. Now it's just about being consistent and doing it all the time. But I just help show them different sides of themselves that they didn't know were already there, and just kind of attacking things with confidence, and learning how to attack some of these problems. We did some mental things going into that championship game where we knew we were playing the team that they had never beaten before ever. And we ended up making like wallpapers for their phones of just some of our best memories throughout the whole year, pictures that we had taken. And then for the next week and a half, the message was just, hey, are we going to beat this team? And the answer is yes. You ask anyone down the hall, hey, who are we beating? And they'll tell you that team. So it's just in their mind the entire time for 2 weeks that they're already going to win this game. And as second things get hard, like they come in with confidence into that game already because we've been saying it nonstop. It's been drilled into their head for the last 2 weeks, and now it's just about performing on the field at that point, and then it's in their hands.
I think that's really great that you created those wallpapers, and that is so meaningful within itself, and how that can really help mentally prepare, and how it did set you up and put you into place. And you talk about that consistency as well, which is really important, and that can play a big part in that mental aspect as well. And it's playing a big part now in terms of how you approach and maybe turn things around, and what the work is that you do with your team. And within doing so, and that you have this opportunity of evolving and developing these players, do you have any rituals and habits which you instill or want to work with or do work with your players now in your current group to try and maintain a sense of consistency about how you go about approaching development, etc.?
A couple things. I think one of the things we're looking at right now that we have Y Scout at this level, and we do have ability to kind of look at stats and break down film, is just passing percentages. So we've been so used to before just kind of doing our own thing and thinking that we're doing something well in games, when in reality it's not as successful as we want it to be. So it's understanding the decision-making process, but then also giving them benchmarks to shoot for. So if my outside backs or my center backs are struggling in possession and we're at around, let's say, 60% mark pass completion-wise, there's more of an understanding of, hey, we have to get that around 85, 80, 75 at the very least, in order for us to be successful in these build-outs and in these games. So just giving them benchmarks for them to think about. It's not necessarily changing their decision-making in the moment, but it's something that they're kind of in the back of their head. Hey, should I play that 50-50 ball 4 times in a row, or can I take this easy pass? First, make sure we keep the ball, and it kind of slows everything down. Helps our decision-making, help us keep the ball and make better decisions down the road. I think eventually what we would get to, or my hope is, one thing that I learned in AmeriCorps was this word that I really live by is Ubuntu. And what it means, it's South African for everything is connected, and my success is your success. And getting to a standpoint for our culture that way, where they understand that every decision you make has an impact on everyone else, and making sure that kind of we're all together and we all kind of stick together that way.
I love Ubuntu, and that comes from Nelson Mandela as well, in terms of his works as well, which it creates such an important message and meaning. And when you bring across a message and meaning and get a bit of storytelling, it can really blend everyone together in terms of what you want to go. And again, reviewing that picture which you have. So whilst it might come down to data or might come down to very basically, bullet pointing where the program is, if you storytell it in a different way, it actually provides a very different contrast and perspective, which is really more important, such as what you're building towards long term, how the core of that group comes, how that development actually shapes. So in 2 to 3 years time, if you're having a lot more success than where you are now, then what a story that is to show that has turned around. So it's a great sort of it's a tough place to be, but I think it's a great scope in terms of how it can go and where you're going to go with it, which is the really important thing as well. And within doing those rituals, those habits, that type of consistency, those standards, that identity that you want to have, what do you value as a coach, and what would you like your teams and players to take away upon the work that you do with them?
That rules are put in place for people that can't follow directions, right? Standards are for people who want to achieve great things. So we can raise those standards, we can get everyone together at that point, then I think ultimately that's where we want to go. We want to make sure that everything we do is done from a place of love and understanding. I think we can get those two things done right off the back, then that acceptance piece comes in, and then you can bring in someone with that more aggressive personality, that directness. They can talk to each other a little bit differently if that foundation is already there and everyone knows that, hey, at the end of the day, like, everything we're doing here is based out of this from a place of love and understanding, and knowing that you're not going to be judged. And I think that goes a long way, especially in a program with female athletes.
And I think that judgment does come into it, but I love what you say about upholding standards and instilling them, because rules are seen in many different ways, and they might not always be the most beneficial of ways of bringing across. So, for example, Simon Sinek says rules are for lazy people, and that's something which stands out completely from the way that he talks about rules, because they're very simple to go in. Don't do this, don't do that. I want you to do this, where you have to get in by this time, or you have to do that. So rather than portraying it as rules, they're more of expectations, what your standards, and people actually can respond in more beneficial ways, and are more willing to actually contribute to these standards and uphold them, rather than going, oh, I've got these rules to abide by. And it can really provide a different perspective and contrast to the way that it can really work and benefit individuals, and again, those personalities within the team.
Yeah, and then at the end of the day, as coaches, it allows you to catch people above the line and then kind of correct that behavior that's below the line, as opposed to just being black and white with a rule.
For sure, absolutely. And when we talk about objectives quite a lot, we talk about performance indicators, etc. But objectives can be very different from those KPIs. But an objective to set at the start of the season can be detrimental as well as beneficial. Having individual objectives, having quarterly. But if you had a sort of outcome, an objective whereby you could attain at the end of the season that you're looking towards, what would that objective sort of be or look like?
I think maximizing the potential of a group would be probably a simplistic way of doing it. I think individually, or like personally for me, I'd like to look at it from like a character standpoint. Is if we can get everyone to focus on working on like different character skills and getting better at those, then that will naturally translate into the game. If I know that I want to work on one, remaining positive, two, being relentless, and three, being a really good teammate. If I can work on those three things, I think that's going to make me a better soccer player. I think that's going to make me a better teammate. I think that's going to translate onto the field. And I think if you get 22 people, 30 people all pulling in the same direction, working for some of those individual character skills that way, then that's going to make a result and have an impact on your overall season.
I really love that objective and the way that you come across from what you'd like to do individually, as well as that portrayal of how you'd look at the opportunity to develop your players at the end of the season, potential, and how that could look away from results and that position of looking at complete performance, but looking at potential and where they're at, and then evaluating performance as an underlying concept of how that could really develop. And whilst you had that team on the back of COVID, and whilst you're in this position now, are these the biggest challenges that you've faced as a coach right now on your journey?
Probably not. I mean, are these tough? Yes, absolutely. But I think starting off, especially so young, when I started off at 22, basically the way it worked is I just got back from AmeriCorps, started working with the local club, took a C-level team that was under 10s at that point. Basically, the kids that all got cut, that they still wanted to take their money, the kids still wanted to play, so they kind of handed them over to me. Oh, he's green, he's brand new, let them learn together. Eventually, those kids were beating the A team by the end of the season. It came time, by the time we hit 13s, and we had to go 11 aside, where just regular club politics, I just wasn't involved in it, and it got handed off to another coach, and without me knowing, and parents found out, they were furious, and it was kind of one of those things where like, hey, we can go do our own thing, be independent. Is that something you'd be interested in? At that point, I said, if you're going to take a chance on me, then yeah, go for it. Like, I'm super loyal as it is, but if I'm loyal to you guys, not necessarily the club. Ended up starting my own club that way. We went independent, grew it from 13 kids that first year. By the time, within 2 or 3 years, we were over 100 kids, 3 teams, and it was still just me. So, I mean, when you do that and you add in all the politics of the local clubs, then they make it hard for you every chance they can, in terms of growth and reputation and things like that. But we focused on doing things the right way, making sure that we kept to ourselves. We stuck to our values. We added futsal to our program, which really benefited us. We were one of the first groups in the area to kind of do that year round in terms of part of our training. By coaching high school, I got access to use the high school field, so kind of removed a roadblock that way in terms of them blocking access to the fields and stuff like that. But just growing things, doing things the right way, and then it ends up being super flattering when you see everything you're doing. Those other clubs start to kind of pick and do the same thing and kind of copy. And while they're still gonna not be the friendliest bunch, at the end of the day, I know I grew a really good reputation over those 10 years doing my own thing, where we were invited to join different leagues under different clubs and kind of fill in for them. And we put players in the national team pool for futsal when it was all said and done. And like I said, we got really good feedback from our parents, where we had a super tight family atmosphere. But that was probably the most difficult thing, is just doing everything on your own, from marketing to recruiting to websites, financials, learning how to do everything that young and kind of still make sure that the soccer looks good and we're still getting better and I'm still getting better. So I think that was probably the most difficult, but I think it was a very unique experience for all of our players involved, our families involved as well. And it's something that I definitely look back on, and I'm very proud of the work we did.
And it's great that you can look back with that proudness and see the work that you were able to do, but take that away, not only for yourself but for the players. And that shows the work that you were doing in terms of other clubs wanting to follow suit or follow the work that you were doing, as well as being invited to other leagues. So whilst you had that roadblock and you removed it, you're at the front of the pack, and everyone wants to be on the same road doing what you're doing, because they're living the success that you're having. And in doing so, you've had such a big impact on those players, but you've built such a big portfolio, big skill set, big experiences through what you've endured, and what they might be as really tough times, they can actually lead to a lot of successes. And again, that portfolio which you're able to take away because of the great work that you've been able to do.
Yeah, definitely look back on it with fond years. I still talk to a lot of those players, still talk to a lot of those parents. And I mean, it was just a great experience overall.
I love that, and I think that's brilliant. And right now, in the position of your sort of team and what you want to deploy and how you go about, do you think it's important to try and develop a competitive nature right now with your team, in the sense of the position that you're currently in?
Absolutely. The one thing at this level is that you know that everyone is good, and that when you have this reputation of not being a powerhouse, that these teams aren't going to give you anything. So we know that we're going to have to fight for everything that we get. We're going to have to go out there and take it every game, because as much as we want to win our first game, we know that everyone has a circled at this point, in order to kind of improve their schedule as well. So it's kind of not only shifting that mindset for these players, but of these other teams that come in here and think they're going to bully us and not understand that we're going to give them a game and we're going to be competitive.
And shifting that mindset is a really important consideration within itself. And you're shifting an entire mindset of a team, a club, a culture, an environment, an institution within that process. And whilst you're shifting that entire mindset, is that something which can easily be done, or is it, again, what you allude to in terms of the lots of personalities, how you build, taking those little steps, how you maintain that, or is it a complete huge contrast and a huge program readjustment, or a huge integration of the way that you deploy things to shift that entire mindset across?
It's definitely a work in progress. I got here in February, so I would say I'm in phase two of it. I wasn't here to see the very beginning of it when Coach Rob took over and kind of had to make some changes. But I think once we do have success, everyone's going to think that it happened overnight, right? But when the reality is, it's taken 2 years, 2.5 years to become an overnight success at that point. And people don't see the amount of work that has to go in from a coaching standpoint, but also from the amount of work that these players have put in. I think probably the most disrespectful thing you can say to someone is that, hey, like, you're naturally good, and they don't see all that work that you put in to get to that level that you're competing at.
I think that's I love what you say in terms of that approach, that natural viewpoint that people may have, and maybe not seeing the work that you're able to put in or have put in, or that time commitment which is so unforeseen at times. And it's not like we're going out seeking gratification, but it is just having that absolute understanding that we have put work into them, and maybe they're not at that point because of the, if we weren't there, then they wouldn't be there because of the work that we've done. So I think that's such an important concept to have, is a player is at a position because of the work that we put into them, and as a result it's because of that commitment that we invested, that time, that mental shift, the work that we've done on the preparation all round in the four corners, and it just shows in terms of all the work that you have been doing, and right now where you're going to go with it as well.
Yeah, and I mean, I think these girls appreciate everything we're doing, right? So they know the amount of hours that Coach Rob puts in and Coach Sandra puts in. They know that I came here in February originally as a volunteer, just because he took a chance on me. Now I'm on staff, but I'm still also working another full-time job. I'm still also finishing up classes, taking 14 credits. So they know, like, I'm almost in the exact same position they are, putting in 80-hour weeks, it feels like, between school, soccer, and work. So I think they definitely do a really good job of making sure that they know that they appreciate us, which I really enjoy and really like. But they also know the amount of work that we're putting in behind the scenes to make sure that we can put them in the best position to succeed.
And I think that's such a great way that they can respond to that, and the way that they take that in their natural stride of how they respond, how they see your position, the position that they're in themselves, and being able to relate to you from seeing the hard work that you put in, not only to yourself, but into the team, and how they can give that back as well. So, what is the great work that Coach Juan is doing? Oh, he put in an extra individual session for me last week. I'm going to give 100% for him in this game because I want to just show that that I listened and I want to apply everything from that session into this game this week and really give that back to him.
Yeah, and I definitely appreciate it, especially, it's definitely a grind. So we know we're not always going to be at our best, or we have bad days every now and then, but we've been doing a really good job picking each other up. They pick me up if I'm having a hard day. I try and pick them up whenever they're having a bad day as well. So it kind of works both ways, which is super unique. It's not like that everywhere we go.
And even better when you can both work hand in hand and pick each other up. And even without realising, sometimes we can go into a session and we can go, do you know what, really enjoyed that. And, there wasn't even, a planned session around fun or anything, but it can be a decent session and we're uplifted from it.
Yep.
For sure. Well, Juan, we've had such a great conversation. We've really took it down the personality route and the position that you're in, where you're currently going, what you'd like to input, your experiences which you've had, how you're shifting that mindset, the work with your players, position which they're currently in, how that is going to look on the long term, to how it structures from now and that strategy, how you support those players, blending personalities, ensuring that their own individual, that key message that you bring, the outlooks on life, the connections that you have, the relationships, and that's all been over the last hour, just taking it down a natural personality route, which has been really nice, and it's such a great episode to really focus on that in a consideration of its own standalone focus within its own outlook, but times are busy, coaches are coaches, and you've got a lot on and balanced, and it's a very hot day as well, and there's a lot of variables which come into being on, but I appreciate you coming on. But I'm just going to do some quick fires with you, as I do with every guest before they leave.
Sounds good.
Perfect. If you had to have someone describe you in 3 words, what 3 words would they be?
I would say passionate, relentless, and caring.
Love them 3 for sure. If you could move to any country to coach, where would it be?
Oof. Probably. I'd probably like to go back to Colombia at some point. Either Colombia or Peru, where my parents are from, and see if I can kind of connect a little bit that way and kind of give back, especially after the hell of a run Colombia had this past World Cup.
I think they've had a great run and they've been doing well over the last few years, Colombia as well. I think they're really going places, and I think the same can be said for Uruguay as well. I know they dropped off a little bit, but they're doing well. And just around those areas in terms of seeing not the natural teams like Spain, like Brazil's and stuff, but seeing those teams come through. And the same like Algeria years ago in the World Cup. Those teams which are starting to come through is such a good contrast to have. So who knows where you're going to go and how that could portray. But if you could spend a day with any coach or manager, who would it be?
I would probably say Bielsa or Dick Bate, one of those two.
Top choices for sure. This might be the same, this might be completely different, but who was or is your role model?
From a tactics point of view, it's definitely Bielsa. From a player management point of view, I love the work Klopp does and how passionate he is on the sidelines and gets the most out of that group.
Absolutely. If you had the chance of being a full-time professional player or an opportunity to spend a lifetime coaching, going to any level you'd like to go, which one would you choose?
I'd say coaching for sure. The impact that you can have day to day, year to year is amazing.
Love that for sure. If you could give a top tip to any coach, what would it be?
Take care of yourself. I know that I recently started getting back into the gym, and not only for physical health but for mental health, kind of find some way to get rid of that stress and kind of turn it off every now and then.
I think that's an important point to really bring up as well. If you had a choice of any job out there in the coaching world, what job would it be that you'd like to take? It depending at any level that you'd like to be, whether that be Colombia manager or whether that be, Liverpool manager or managing a team which Bielsa has had. You've got a choice of any job, any range, any level in the coaching world.
Ooh, I think for where my sights are set right now, it'd probably be at the D1 level at a fully funded program where you kind of have the opportunity to do something special.
Love that for sure. If you weren't coaching, what else would you be doing?
Right now, outside of coaching, I do government recruiting. So doing all the background checks and talking to people and just kind of helping people out that way is kind of something that I really enjoy.
Sounds interesting for sure. Who is your all-time favorite player?
Ooh, all time, probably Ronaldo.
Good choice for sure. What is your biggest pet peeve in coaching?
Shorts without pockets would probably be my biggest one. As a coach, where we get some gear that doesn't have pockets, some gear that does. I think the other thing would be rolling up to the field and not saying hello. It takes 2 seconds to do. It puts everyone in a good mood. But if your first conversation with me is telling me about a problem or something I need to fix instead of hello, how are you doing, then it usually puts me in a bad mood pretty fast.
I'm massive on that, being hello, just fist bumps on the way in, fist bumps on the way out. That gratitude, that, just saying hello, cheers for being here, or just hello, glad you're here. But also, I remember getting coaching kits and having plenty of shorts without pockets. And like, how are we supposed to coach? Where are we putting everything? Am I supposed to coach with my backpack on?
Right.
For sure, that is one of my biggest pet peeves. What is your favorite thing to do in your downtime?
Honestly, probably just Netflix. Just binge something on out there, or talk to my brother on the phone, kind of catch up with him, see how he's doing.
Beautiful, beautiful. What does reflection mean to you?
Being able to kind of turn everything off. So whether it's like meditation or sometimes just go out to a movie, just not have to think about anything. And just kind of sit there in the moment and kind of reflect on things, and just kind of see where it takes you.
Love that. Brilliant for sure. What are your 3 non-negotiables?
Making sure that you are passionate, that you are doing things out of a place of love and not spite, and making sure that when things get hard, that you kind of know where your roadblocks are going to be, so you can kind of get ahead of that ahead of time.
That's brilliant. If you could recommend one book, what book would it be?
Ooh, I would say anything in the What Drives Winning series. I think they do a really good job in terms of not only building teams but environments and helping individual players as well kind of work through things.
Good choice. And a final one. What is one thing you enjoy most about coaching?
Probably just the amount of people that you meet, whether it's different players that you run into every now and then. It could be someone that I haven't coached in 4 or 5 years, and they still remember me. I still remember them, and just kind of have those memories that you kind of build along the way.
Love that, and that wraps up such a great time spent with you, and a wonderful episode. And I really appreciate you sitting through the heat and getting this episode recorded. But I'm glad that it was organised so quickly, and that you were able to come on and take this down a personality route and how you can shape that mindset and that shift that comes into it. But also, wishing you the best of luck in terms of how this program goes about, everything which you're doing, both personally, professionally, and that combination of everything which you take upon. But it was great to speak to you, and I really appreciate your time.
You as well, man. Thanks for having me on.
Such a pleasure. Well, take care, and I'll speak to you soon.
Yep, you have a good one, man.
And you. Bye.
I think it depends how you look at it. I think from the player's point of view, probably not that big of an impact. At the end of the day, they want to know that first, that you care, 2, that you know what you're talking about, and 3, that you're willing to make them better and that you're doing the work. I think if they see those 3 things from you, then it doesn't matter what level you played at. From a coaching standpoint, probably a little bit more, where, especially at this high of a level, most of these guys that do have these jobs do have excellent credentials, did play college soccer, or played overseas or anything like that. So from that standpoint, it's a little bit intimidating, but